Hey, Mike here. I just wanted to let you know that you can listen to Dark Poutine early and ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime.
Welcome back to Dark Poutine. I am Mike Brown.
And I am Matthew. And Mike, I'm disappointed. Last week's episode was number 420, and you didn't do a cannabis theme. You failed.
Yes, I failed. I assumed that you would think it was too on the nose, but between shows, we've discussed that, and it was like, oh, shoot, I screwed up.
Too funny.
Oh, well.
The views, information, and opinions expressed during the Dark Poutine podcast are solely those of the producer and do not necessarily represent those of Curious Cast, its affiliate, Global News, nor their parent company, Chorus Entertainment.
Dark Poutine is not for the faint of heart or squeamish. Our content is often intense, and some listeners may find it disturbing. We're not experts on the topics we present, nor are we journalists. We are ordinary Canadian schmucks chatting about crime and the dark side of history. Let's get to it. Put on your toque, grab yourself a double-double and an Nanaimo bar. It's time to scarf down some Dark Poutine.
You are responsible for obtaining and maintaining at your own cost all equipment needed to listen to Dark Poutine. Dark Poutine can be addictive. Side effects may include, but not be limited to, pausing and questioning the system, elevated heart rate, pondering humanity, odd looks from colleagues as you laugh out loud at work, family members not into true crime worrying about you. Positive side effects may include some perspectives and opinions that you disagree with, as well as some wokeness and empathy. If you don't think Dark Poutine is for you, consult your doctor immediately.
It was a Tuesday morning in late July 1996, and John Kopic was doing what he did every morning, working the waters off the coast of South Devon, hauling his nets. What came up on July 28th was not fish. The body of a man broke the surface, tangled in the net. He'd been in the water for some time. There was an injury to the back of his head, but the sea was the sea, and injuries happened. Devon and Cornwall police were called to the docks. The working assumption at that point was accidental drowning. The man had no wallet, no identification, nothing that told the officers standing at the dock who he was, where he had come from, or who to call. Nothing, that is, except a watch. That timepiece would break open the case, taking investigators across the pond to Canada and back through years of deception and numerous crimes, including murder. You are listening to Dark Poutine episode 421, Ripoffs and a Rolex, the murder of Ronald Joseph Platt. In 1968, a young couple named Bob and Betty Staley walked into Knox United Church in Ayr, Ontario, a small community west of Hamilton, and there they met a 23-year-old man who had recently joined the choir. His name was Albert Walker. He was newly married, personable, and the kind of man who made an impression. Over the following years, the two families became close. Bob and Betty's son Andy grew up babysitting Walker's youngest children. And when the Staleys eventually moved away from Ayr in 1978, it was Walker who kept in touch, calling, visiting, maintaining the friendship long after the proximity that had started it was gone. Years later, Walker's ex-wife Barbara would write a memoir about her life with him. In it, she recalled asking him once why he'd worked so hard to stay close to people after they moved away. But his answer was simple, quote, "Because one day they'll have money," end quote. And the Staleys did have money. They inherited 80 hectares of undeveloped land in the Vandorf area of Toronto. By that point, Walker was nearly a decade into what appeared to be a thriving financial services business. 6 branches, 30 employees, and clients spread across southwestern Ontario. Walker Financial Services Incorporated had started as a one-man bookkeeping operation in the late 70s and had grown into what, on the surface, looked like a legitimate, successful firm. Its brochure advertised a one-stop financial shop, investments, bookkeeping, and more. Its clients were largely middle-income, largely elderly, and largely people who knew Walker through church, through the community, and through word of mouth. People who had watched him build something from nothing and trusted him because of it. Walker managed the Staleys' affairs as he managed everyone else's, with confidence, with apparent competence, with the easy authority of a man who knew more about money than you did. He was, according to people who knew him in those years, a gifted salesman, urbane, persuasive. The kind of person who made you feel that your money was in good hands. As the 1980s wore on, Walker expanded. More branches, more clients, more money moving through accounts he controlled. Behind the respectable front, banking records would later show he had been quietly converting client funds, moving money from Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce accounts in southwestern Ontario into a Credit Suisse account in Toronto, and from there to his own Credit Suisse account in Geneva. He was purchasing gold bars, foreign currency, and building reserves offshore through a corporation registered in the Cayman Islands. By the time anyone understood what had happened, it was too late to stop it. Bob and Betty Staley had a meeting scheduled with Walker for December 5, 1990. He told them he would explain the state of their finances. He'd been putting them off for months, and they'd grown frightened, pushing harder for answers, demanding transparency, and sensing that something was terribly wrong. Walker never showed.
That's what I call a long con. So Mike, he meets these people in 1968 and he runs in 1990.
Mm-hmm.
That is a long time. It's interesting how in a big city, a con lives on anonymity, but in a small town, it lives off of consistency.
Yeah, like our Kamloops episode.
Yeah, you're not vetted by people in a small town. You get absorbed over time.
Mm-hmm. You're just part of the furniture, yeah.
He's more trusted, right?
Yeah.
He stayed there such a long time that to the point where he wasn't being judged at all. He was just accepted. And once you're in that position, when money gets involved, they probably just assume that the history covers the trust.
Yeah, right.
That kind of approach from a con man takes patience and a very clear understanding. Like this guy understood how trust actually forms.
Mm-hmm.
He can obviously step back with a very high level of deviousness and see how trust gets formed and then work that to his own advantage and to other people's disadvantage.
Albert Walker had charged 2 first-class British Airways tickets to his American Express card on November 28th for $12,542. On December 5th, the day of the meeting, he boarded a flight to London. He was accompanied by his 15-year-old daughter, Sheena. He told his wife it was a 2-week ski holiday. He had no intention of coming back. January 15, 1991 is the date Andy Staley calls, quote, the day of reckoning, the day the full picture became clear to his family, what Walker had done, the scale of it, and the deliberateness of it. Bob Staley suffered a life-threatening mental breakdown. Betty began collecting documents, every record, every piece of paper connected to their dealings with Walker Financial, and put them in a box. She kept it for the rest of her life. Reflecting on the situation more than 30 years later, Andy Staley said he knows what it means to truly hate someone. Not the way people use the word loosely about a boss or whoever, the real thing. Andy hated what Albert Walker did to his family. The Staleys were not alone. Approximately 70 clients across southwestern Ontario were now holding worthless paper. Many of them were elderly. Many of them had handed Walker their life savings. A joint investigation was launched by Woodstock City Police, the Ontario Provincial Police, and the RCMP. 18 charges of theft, fraud, and money laundering were eventually laid. Walker was placed at the top of the Ontario Most Wanted list. When Albert Walker left Paris, Ontario, he left behind his wife Barbara and 3 of his 4 children, as well as a house that had been remortgaged without his wife's knowledge. He left behind a balance of $41,000 on his American Express card, including an $11,556 purchase from Burke's Jewelers in Toronto, made 3 weeks before he boarded that flight, a diamond ring and earrings, for whom Barbara Walker did not know. Barbara MacDonald had met Albert Walker in 1968 at the University of Waterloo, where she was a student and he was working in the library. They married the same year, 3 months after they met, in a chapel on campus, and eventually settled down in her hometown of Ayr. They had 4 children together. Barbara had a talent for numbers, and it was her who helped build the early bookkeeping business that became Walker Financial, doing taxes for local clients before the operation grew beyond the 2 of them. By 1990, the marriage had been deteriorating for years. That spring, Walker had gone to Switzerland ostensibly on business, accompanied by a female employee with whom he was having an affair. He acknowledged it to Barbara when he returned. They attempted to reconcile but failed. What followed was a custody dispute that Walker turned, as he turned most things, to his own advantage. In August of 1990, while Barbara was at work, Walker moved the children, including 15-year-old Sheena, to a rented home in Brantford, 5 kilometers east of Paris. He left no forwarding address. He left no phone number. A custody hearing followed, and a judge awarded Walker interim custody of his 2 older daughters, including Sheena. The 2 younger children remained with Barbara. By November, Walker was pushing his way into the family home. Barbara called the police, who charged him with forcible entry. None of it slowed him down. On December 5, 1990, Walker and Sheena boarded their flight to London. When Barbara realized her daughter was not coming back, she reported Sheena missing. She believed at first Sheena had been abducted, that she'd not gone willingly, and she had not had a choice. She hired private investigators to find her. Friends and neighbors in Paris held fundraisers to cover the costs. For the next 6 years, Barbara Walker did not know where her daughter was. She didn't know whether Sheena was safe or even alive. She did not know what was happening to her. She was 43 years old. She had 3 children at home, a remortgaged house, a husband who was now a fugitive, and a daughter who'd vanished. And she wasn't the only woman Walker had left behind. Jillian, his eldest daughter, maintained some contact with her father even after he fled, something that speaks perhaps to the hold Walker kept over people even across the ocean in years of absence. The nature of that contact and what it cost her belongs to her. What belongs to this episode is what Barbara did next. She did not disappear quietly. She cooperated with investigators. She talked to journalists, and she kept looking for Sheena.
Yeah, and I don't know how you come back from something like that. Not just the money or the disappearance, but this person that you married.
Right, yeah.
Center of your life. Even memory you'd be reinterpreting, and every moment that you ever had with them would become suspect.
Mm-hmm.
And her maybe lack of trust wouldn't have stayed contained to him. Like, this sort of betrayal would inevitably leak outwards to other aspects of your life.
Of course.
Changes how you see people.
Yep.
Like, what do you believe in other people when you thought, I married someone who was such a liar? Like, how can you trust anybody for a while after this? How do you trust anyone again?
The answer to where Sheena was and what her life had become in the years since that December flight would not come for a very long time. For now, somewhere in England, Albert Walker was becoming someone else entirely, and he was looking, as he always looked, for the next person who could be useful to him. 2 months after leaving Canada, Albert Walker surfaced in London, and he was no longer Albert Walker. He'd reinvented himself as David Wallace Davis, a wealthy American entrepreneur who had recently sold his New York bank and was looking, he said, for a quieter life. He was well-dressed, confident. He spoke with the easy authority of a man accustomed to being believed. Within months, he had made his way to North Harrogate, a prosperous spa town in North Yorkshire, where he and Sheena began attending Harrogate Baptist Church every Sunday. The Reverend David Hoskins, who led the congregation at the time, remembered Davis clearly decades later. Urbane, he said, dressed in a blazer and striped tie, a real smooth operator. Davis told the congregation he and his daughter had recently arrived from New York. Nobody had any reason to doubt him. He was charming, generous with his time, and apparently wealthy. He tried, Hoskins noted, to interest members of the congregation in various financial opportunities. Luckily, no one took him up on it. Sheena was 15 when she boarded that flight with her father in December of 1990. By the time they reached Harrogate, she was 16. Walker introduced her to the congregation as his daughter. To some neighbors, over time, she appeared to be something else. The age gap between Walker and his apparent companion, he was in his mid-40s and she was a teenager, prompted, according to those who later spoke publicly about it, a kind of unease that people struggled to name at the time and chose not to ask about directly. That was not the kind of town Harrogate was, and Davis was not the kind of man who invited questions. It was in Harrogate that Walker met the two people who would define the next chapter of his time in England. Ellen Boyes was 31 years old, a receptionist at a fine art auction house, outgoing and career-driven. Her long-term partner was Ronald Joseph Platt, 46, a television repairman, a man of few words and fewer friends, but warm by every account that survives him. He was quiet and gentle. The kind of man, Elaine later said, who was just lovely, just a very caring, warm man. Ron had a Canadian maple leaf tattooed on the back of his right hand. He'd spent part of his childhood in Canada and had never stopped thinking about going back. It was for him a place that represented something better, a fresh start, a different life, open space. He talked about it often. He also wore a Rolex Oyster Perpetual everywhere. The watch was worth around £800 brand new at the time. Ron wore it in the shower and to bed every day. He was, Elaine said, crazy about precision engineering, about things built to last. The watch was his most prized possession. Albert Walker introduced himself to the couple as David Davis. Within months, he'd made them directors of his new company, the Cavendish Corporation, and was sending them on business trips across Europe, asking them on each trip to deposit cash into foreign bank accounts on his behalf. Whether Ron and Elaine understood what they were participating in has never been established. What is established is the way that they trusted him completely. By Christmas of 1992, Sheena was pregnant, and Walker had a proposition for Ron and Elaine. He would fund their move to Canada, the dream Ron had carried for years. He would pay for everything. All he needed, he explained, was for Ron to leave behind a few documents before he went. His driver's license, his birth certificate, his signature stamp, a credit card, all just for the business, Walker said, so things could keep running while Ron was away. Ron agreed, and in February of 1993, he and Elaine boarded a flight to Calgary. Albert Walker had given them one-way tickets.
Yeah, so hold on for a second, because this is everything. Driver's license, birth certificate, signature, credit card.
Yeah.
That's not administration, that's identity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I get how this happened. Maybe it was framed as temporary, just for business, and it's tied to this guy's dream, right? He's moving on with his life, and it's, he's worked for this guy, and there's some funding that happens, and maybe it shifted how he heard the ask, the request. But if you're listening to this, hear me right now. Never, never, never hand off that stuff to anyone. Right. Not a friend, not a business partner, not even your partner. not to anyone, because those documents are you. And once they're out of your control, so are the consequences. And in this case, that's exactly the point.
And we're not blaming Ron for what became of him.
No, like I said, I can understand it, right? It's sort of like this guy was a long-term con artist shyster.
Yeah.
Another long con with these poor people, right? So
he's more devious, I think, than many that we've talked about.
Much more devious. And I think that one good thing that comes out of this story is a reminder for other people, right? These people weren't stupid people. They got conned by an evil man.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And just, and we all think we're smart, right? But just be careful out there, everybody.
There are many people who say, I would never join a cult. Many, many people. And some of those people are people who actually end up joining a cult.
Yeah, I would never join a cult.
The minute Ron Platt left British soil, Albert Walker assumed his identity. He packed up Harrogate, moved 480 kilometers south to Devon, and arrived with Sheena, now visibly pregnant, as his wife. Her name was Noel Platt. His name was Ronald. They had a baby on the way. The Davis chapter was closed. The people who had known him in Harrogate, Ron and Elaine, and the congregation at the Baptist Church in Harrogate had no connection to Devon. There was no overlap. Walker had, as he had done before, walked cleanly out of one life and into another. In Devon, nobody knew him as Davis or Walker. In Devon, nobody knew him as anything. He was simply Ronald Platt, a prosperous, quiet-spoken man with a young wife and a growing family. And for 3 years, the subterfuge held. Then, Ronald Platt came back. Canada had not worked out. The relationship between Ron and Elaine had broken down, and Elaine had returned to England alone. Ron, out of money and without the life he had imagined, followed. He settled in Essex, in the southeast of England, and made contact again with his old friend David Davis, who was now living nearby. He did not know that Dave Davis was calling himself Ronald Platt. He did not know that the man he trusted had spent 3 years living under his name and documents as his legal identity. He did not know any of it. The real Ron Platt was broke. He was alone, and Davis, Walker, was the person he turned to. Walker gave him money, kept him close, and began quietly to consider what came next. He landed on a sinister plan. More after a quick break. And we are back at the halfway point. Matthew, thoughts?
Yeah, this guy's truly a terrible human being.
Yeah, not a good guy.
His level of depravity is actually quite shocking. So many other stories where we tell Mike it's a short, sudden thing, but this guy just keeps going all of his life.
Right. Yeah.
Right? He's not even hiding in a traditional sense. He's not off grid. He's not isolated. He's right there with neighbors and routine and school runs, normal life. And that's a trick for him.
Right.
We think identity is something fixed, but in practice, it's social. It exists because people accept it. Hi, I'm Mike Brown. Okay. Oh, hi, Mike Brown.
Right.
If everyone agrees you're Ronald Platt, then for all practical purposes, you are.
You are. Yep.
And Walker understood that better than most people ever will, that identity isn't just documents. The documents help them create that false identity, but it's that behavior and confidence and repetition. And I just don't understand how this guy could keep this up for so long. Decades. He was scamming people for decades.
Yeah, it's really, really scary. It is very scary how long this guy was willing to do what he did to gain the things that he did. And it wasn't like at the end of the day, it wasn't a huge amount. It was a huge amount for the people who he conned.
Of course it was.
Really? Is it worth your soul to do that kind of thing?
The problem is older people, right? They don't have the opportunity to make anything back anymore.
No.
Right?
No.
Like, dude, Mike, I'm like 9 years from supposed retirement, right?
Don't get me started on that one. Holy smokes.
Right? It's sort of like, I'm not 20. I don't have 40 years to make money. So if you get conned at everything you have in your 60s, 70s, it's a terrible thing to do to somebody.
Yep.
Absolutely terrible.
It is evil. By the summer of 1996, Albert Walker had been living as Ronald Platt for 3 years. He and Sheena, Noel Platt to everyone who knew them, had moved from Devon to Essex, settling in the village of Woodham Walter. To their neighbors, they were an unremarkable, prosperous couple, 2 small daughters, a comfortable home. Walker had dyed his hair and invested in expensive dental work. He had done what he always did, assembled a life from borrowed materials and presented it with enough confidence that nobody looked twice. The problem was living just streets away. The real Ronald Platt had returned from Canada broken alone, and he was looking to his friend David Davis for help. The situation was becoming impossible. 2 men, same name, same date of birth, same documents, same county. Walker was number 4 on Interpol's most wanted list at the time. The whole architecture of his life he'd built, the identity, the marriage, the children, everything rested on nobody ever putting these 2 men in the same room and asking the obvious question. Ron Platt, the real one, simply by existing and simply by being nearby, had become the single greatest threat to everything Walker had constructed. In July of 1996, Walker invited Platt to Devon. He told him he needed help sailing his boat, the Lady Jane, from Devon back up to Essex. He framed it as a favor, a few days on the coast, perhaps a bit of an adventure. Sheena and the girls would be there. It would be a holiday of sorts. Ronald Platt agreed to go. Platt was not a sailor. He had a deep-seated fear of water. He couldn't swim. By every account that survives him, he was a gentle, trusting man. He was someone who moved through life expecting the best of people around him. He had known Walker for 5 years. Through the Cavendish Corporation, through the move to Canada, through the lean years after he came back, Davis had always been there when Ron needed him. He had no reason not to go. On the evening of July 20th, 1996, the 2 men took the Lady Jane out into the English Channel. Ron explained that Sheena and the children had to stay behind. Walker came back alone. For 6 weeks, nobody noticed Ronald Platt was gone. There was nobody to notice. Elaine was in Harrogate. His neighbors knew him as a man who kept to himself. When Walker spoke to Elaine and she asked after Ron, he told her Ron had gone to France. He did not mention anything else. He said the same thing the next time she asked. On July 28th, 8 days after the 2 men set out on the Lady Jane, John Coppock was hauling in his nets off the South Devon coast and was shocked by what he found there. It was the body of a man wearing a Rolex Oyster Perpetual. The body in John Coppock's net was a dead end at first. No wallet, no identification, and an injury to the back of the head that could have meant anything. Devon and Cornwall police had a dead man and no name, and the working assumption accidental drowning was reasonable enough that it might have stayed that way. Then one of the attending officers noticed the watch, the Rolex Oyster Perpetual. Nice watch. Devon and Cornwall police contacted Rolex, who confirmed what their service records showed. The watch had been brought in for servicing in Harrogate, North Yorkshire in 1986 by a man named Ronald Joseph Platt. The police began looking for Ronald Joseph Platt. Was he their dead man? A search of Platt's last known address turned up a reference letter he had given to a letting agent. The letter contained a mobile number for a man described as a close friend, David Davis. Essex police contacted Davis. He came in voluntarily. He was cooperative and helpful. He told them that as far as he knew, Ronald Platt had gone to France. There was nothing in his manner to suggest otherwise. The death still looked like a drowning. The investigation stalled. Then a neighbor mentioned in passing something that changed everything. The man they'd been speaking to, David Davis, did not actually live at the address they'd visited. The man who lived there was called Ronald Platt, and Ronald Platt, the neighbor mentioned, owned a yacht in Devon. Devon and Cornwall police now had a problem they had not anticipated. The dead man in their morgue was Ronald Platt, according to the Rolex. The man they had just interviewed in Essex was also Ronald Platt, according to his neighbors. One of them was not who he claimed to be, and one of them was dead, and the connection between the two was a yacht sitting in a Devon marina. Detective Constable Ian Clenahan was 29 years old and 1 week into his new posting when the case landed on his desk. His supervisor was Detective Sergeant Bill MacDonald. Neither of them had encountered anything like it. MacDonald would say later that detectives around the world dream of a case like this one. He would also say that they nearly got it wrong on several occasions. They then heard the name Elaine Boyes. The real Ron Platt's brother said that she was Ron's longtime girlfriend who lived in Harrogate. Clenahan and MacDonald reached her by phone, and what she told them stopped the investigation in its tracks. She'd spoken to David Davis approximately 3 months after the body was found. He had not mentioned Ron was dead. He had told her, as he had told the police, that Ron had gone to France. At the end of the call, almost as an afterthought, she had asked him if he had heard from Ron lately. He said he hadn't, not since June. Ron had gone to France. Elaine Boyes had known Davis for years, and she'd worked for him. She trusted him. And sitting on the phone with a detective from Devon, something shifted. MacDonald told her he was getting bad feelings about Davis. Boyes told him she had spoken to Davis just weeks earlier and what he had told her, as he'd apparently told everyone that Ron had simply gone to France. Her instinct, she said, told her immediately that Davis was involved in whatever happened to Ron. She didn't know how, but she was certain. It was Elaine Boyes who moved the investigation forward. She could explain the history. The Cavendish Corporation, the business trips, the documents Ron left behind, the one-way tickets to Calgary. She could explain who Don Davis was and what his relationship to Ronald Platt had been. She was the only person alive who knew both men. Weeks later, routine fingerprint checks returned a result that Clenahan and MacDonald had not expected. A fax arrived at the Devon station. Along with the fingerprint confirmation, a poster of Interpol's 20 most wanted international fugitives. In the center of the page was a photograph of David Davis alongside an international arrest warrant. His real name, the fax said, was Albert Walker. He was a Canadian national. He'd been wanted since 1990 for fraud, theft, and money laundering. He was the 4th most wanted fugitive on Interpol's list. Clenahan, shocked, stood at the fax machine and stared at it. "We're like, oh my God," he said later. "In sleepy Devon, there he is." The next page out of the fax machine was a photograph of Noelle Platt. Her real name was Sheena Walker. She was Albert Walker's daughter. On October 31st, 1997, Halloween, Devon and Cornwall police moved on Walker's home in Woodham, Walter, Essex. They found Albert Walker inside. They found Sheena stuffing gold bars into a diaper bag. Walker had spent £67,000 on gold bullion in the weeks prior to his arrest. He had been preparing, as he always prepared, to disappear. He didn't get to this time. Walker was arrested on suspicion of the murder of Ronald Joseph Platt. Sheena was taken in for questioning and released on bail. She returned to Canada with her daughters shortly afterward. She had no legal obligation to return for the trial. Whether she would come back and what she would say if she did were, for the Devon and Cornwall police, the most pressing questions of the entire case.
One thing I've found difficult here is, she may or may not have known what happened on that boat, but she was shoving gold into Diaper's bag to make a quick escape. She knew about the lies, but no charges at all were brought against her. It seems sort of, I don't quite understand this part of the story of why she was just a material witness when she was there all along.
Right, and we've debated this offline a bit. The word you used was dodgy. I think so too. I can't speak to someone's motivations. I can't speak to the court's motivations as to why they didn't look at her as an accomplice or even like an after-the-fact accomplice.
And I'm not saying she's guilty or not guilty of anything. What I'm saying is it's really weird to me that no charges, like it just sort of like, okay, we're going to interview, then you can leave the country. That just seems weird to me, right?
I mean, it could have been a lot of things. She was 15 when she disappeared, and her father had a long time to con her, too.
Yeah, she's also in her 20s when this guy was murdered.
Yeah, I know. It's really fascinating. But it's that whole idea of the long con. I mean, if he was conning other people, he was definitely conning her, too.
Oh, this guy conned every person he ever came in contact with, right?
Yeah. And she was a valuable witness for the prosecution in this case. And where does the value lie in convicting her as opposed to him? She could have just clammed up if she was charged with anything and not helped them at all. Anyway, Detective Brian Slade was assigned to manage the relationship with Sheena. He called her regularly for months, slowly building trust. She didn't want to engage with me at all, he recalled. Not even one-word answers. She was extremely distrustful of the police. But after a phone call from her father in prison, Sheena opened up. She'd been away from him long enough to know now that he was trying to con her too, and she could hear it in every word. He was asking her to be more than just quiet. He wanted her to lie to the police. Whatever Sheena Walker had been uncertain about before that phone call, she was less uncertain afterward. She told Slade that she would come back. Devon and Cornwall police took an unusual step. They flew her to England secretly on an RAF Nimrod maritime patrol aircraft. Slade recalled her sitting in the back of the car on the way from the airport in tears, stressed, trying to steel herself for what was coming. The trial opened on June 22, 1998, at Exeter Crown Court. The prosecution's case was entirely circumstantial. There were no witnesses. No one had seen the two men together in the days before the murder. The Crown prosecutor, Charles Barton, called 36 witnesses to build a case from fragments. A GPS record from the Lady Jane that placed Walker's boat in the area where the body was found on the date the Rolex established as the time of death, and one of Platt's fingerprints recovered from a plastic bag on the boat. It was not a lot, but it was enough. Elaine Boyes attended the trial every day. She sat in the gallery and watched the man she'd known as David Davis take the stand for 2 days. Walker admitted he was a liar. He admitted he was a thief. He denied absolutely and without qualification that he had murdered Ronald Platt. Elaine did not make eye contact with him. Then Sheena took the stand. She was 22 years old. She'd spent 6 years living inside her father's constructed world, including the changing of their names, various identities, and his version of reality. She addressed the jury directly. She did not look at her father once. Walker's eyes were fixed on her throughout her entire testimony. She confirmed that her father had called her from prison and asked her to lie for him, and she had refused. And then came the question that had hung over the proceedings from the moment police found the two men living under the same name. Who was the father of Sheena's 2 daughters? Their birth certificates named Ronald Platt. The real Ronald Platt was dead. Walker spent 2 days on the stand and would not answer. Sheena testified for the prosecution and would not answer it either. The jury of 8 men and 4 women heard the question asked in open court and watched both of them refuse to respond. It has never been answered, not in that courtroom, not in the books written about the case, not in the 30 years since. It remains publicly unresolved. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. The foreman's response, when asked for the verdict, guilty. Albert Walker showed no emotion as the sentence was passed. Life imprisonment, automatic under English law for murder. Elaine Boyes walked out of the Exeter Crown Court into the summer afternoon. Afterwards, she described the real Ronald Platt as a kind, honest, and gentle man. On the same day, a civil hearing began involving 70 people in southwestern Ontario, many of them elderly, waiting to find out how much of their money could be recovered. The answer, it turned out, would take years to arrive. The assets seized at the time of Walker's arrest were itemized and handed to KPMG's London, Ontario office, which had been administering the bankrupt estates of Walker and his company since 1990. The list was not unimpressive on paper. The Lady Jane, oil paintings, gold bars, approximately $290,000 in cash, and 25 European bank accounts scattered across England, France, Italy, Switzerland, and the Cayman Islands. Against $3.2 million stolen from 70 people, it was not enough. The Lady Jane was sold first to offset the Crown's legal costs. The accounts were frozen and picked over. By the time KPMG had done what it could, approximately $500,000 had been recovered. Walker refused to account for the rest. He has never accounted for it. Where the remaining money went has never been established. It is unknown whether it was spent, hidden, lost in failed ventures, or is sitting somewhere still. Eric Winter was 75 years old and living in Brantford when the trial ended. His late wife, Myrtle, had sold her accounting business to Walker in the mid-1980s for $100,000. She'd never been paid. When asked about the prospect of recovery, Winter was direct. Quote, "I don't think I'll get anything back," he said. "I've got a funny feeling it's a waste of time pursuing this." He was right. In Ayr, Ontario, Andy Staley was living with the contents of his mother Betty's safe deposit box. He had every document, every record, every piece of paper she had collected over the years in the hope that one day Albert Walker would be found and made to answer for what he had done. Yeah, Albert Walker was in jail, but all that Andy had was his mother's safe deposit box. In February of 2005, Walker was transferred from a British prison to Kingston Penitentiary in Ontario, where he faced the outstanding Canadian fraud charges. In July of 2007, Justice Rommel Mass sentenced him to 4 years for 19 fraud-related crimes, with 1 year concurrent for violations of the Bankruptcy and Insolvency Act. He pleaded guilty. The sentence ran concurrent with his life term for murder. For the 70 people who had been waiting since 1990, it was effectively a formality. Sheena Walker returned to Paris, Ontario with her daughters and quietly rebuilt her life. Her mother, Barbara, was there. The community, by all accounts, left her alone. The question of her daughter's paternity, asked in open court in Exeter and left unanswered, followed her home and has never been resolved. People still whisper about it. Barbara Walker, who had spent 6 years not knowing where her daughter was or whether she was safe, who'd hired private investigators and held on while her neighbors held fundraisers, got her daughter back. What the reunion between them contained is not part of the public record.
You know, what I find sad, though, is nobody did a fundraiser for the victims of this guy to get their money back, or nobody did fundraising to hire private investigators to figure out where the money could have gone. I think that's sad.
Yeah, I do too.
Community rallies around this daughter who, was there through all these cons in the UK as an adult, but nobody's rallying behind elderly people who lost everything.
Yeah.
You know?
At least not publicly, yeah. Barbara Walker eventually wrote a memoir, Dancing Devil, My 20 Years with Albert Walker, published in 2002. That became one of the most detailed accounts of who Walker was before the world knew his name. In June of 2023, after 26 years of incarceration, Walker, now 77 years old, was granted 60 days of temporary day parole. The conditions included no contact with victims, no work in the financial industry, and a strict curfew. In February of 2024, the Parole Board of Canada revoked his day parole. Walker had continued, even after 26 years, to misrepresent his crimes, telling people that Platt had attacked him first, minimizing the scale of the fraud and asking people to call him David. The board's written decision stated, quote, "Of great concern to the board is that you continue to misrepresent your criminal behavior," end quote. That leopard had not changed his spots.
It always makes me laugh, Mike, how people who shouldn't get parole, it's so obvious to all of us, but it's rarely obvious to the parole board.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like,
I do.
Oh, parole board. Once again.
Oh, you sweet summer child, parole board. Ronald Platt's ex, Elaine Boyes, is still in England. She spent the years since the trial trying to make sense of what happened to her and to the man she loved. She's writing a book about it. Ron Platt's Rolex, the watch that kept running in the English Channel for 8 days, the watch that gave him back his name, is part of the public record of a murder trial now. Whether it still exists and where it is are not publicly known. And Andy Staley's box is still in his house in Orangeville, Ontario. The money his parents gave to Albert Walker is still missing. And that is it for Dark Poutine episode 421, Ripoffs and a Rolex, the murder of Ronald Joseph Platt.
That's right. It's time for voicemails. You can leave us a message at 1-877-327-5786 or 1-877-DARK-PTN. We'd love to hear from you. Let's see who called us this week.
Alrighty, we have a couple of voicemails, and let's listen to them. Here's our first one.
Hey, Dark Poutine. This is somebody from the United States. I just wanted to say that you've got fans in the South. We have funny accents as well, eh? We love your podcast. My family loves your podcast, and we just wanted to say so. So thanks for the good work that you put in, and I appreciate your stories, and I look forward to hearing many more of them from Raleigh, North Carolina. Bye.
Okay. So we don't even know her name.
A place so nice, she said it twice.
A place so nice, she said it twice. Raleigh, North Carolina. I have a friend who lives in Raleigh, North Carolina that my sister was in university with, I think.
What's Raleigh, North Carolina known for? Because I've heard the name a few times.
Isn't it tobacco?
That's why that's what it is. I used to work in the tobacco industry.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And I don't know if that's what it's known for now, but my brain just went right to tobacco.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, tobacco is definitely historically, yeah.
It's actually known for its universities now, including North Carolina State University.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. So it's a college town, which is that's kind of cool. So that person from Raleigh.
Are we going to call her Jessica?
Okay, Jessica from Raleigh, North Carolina.
She does nothing. She's a tobacco heiress.
Oh, an heiress. Oh, I would love to be an heiress of some description.
I would love to be a tobacco heiress.
Oh, my goodness.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, all that blood money, living off all that blood money.
Hey. It had its benefits.
I guess so. I did like tobacco at some point in my life. I liked it very much, so much so that it took a long time to quit. But anyway, thank you so much. We do have another. It's someone familiar.
Hi, Mike and Matthew. This is Jen Hesse. I heard a fellow millennial call in when I was listening to the recent episode and decided it was time for me to call again. As an elder millennial, I rarely accept myself being in this category. I much prefer the Oregon Trail generation. But yes, we really don't like phones. Anyway, Matthew, I too get the creme brulee wherever I go, and I find myself rating a restaurant based on what they can do with it. There's a bistro near the border in Langley Township that does a lovely seasonal creme brulee. My favorite there so far has been the Earl Grey. The most unique I've had was watermelon. It wasn't very well done, so I won't mention the location, but it did give me lovely summer vibes. Thank you for telling these important stories and giving voice to both the expectation of the time and perception of today. We can't undo what has been done, but giving voice to injustice helps prevent future injustices over time. Keep up the amazing work. Bye.
Aww.
So I was laughing thinking that last little spiel she did, I was picturing it all about creme brulee for a minute. About the injustices of really bad creme brulees.
There are injustices of creme brulees.
The biggest injustice of creme brulee is Justin and I were in a hotel in Sofia, Bulgaria, and I ordered creme brulee, and it was this massive restaurant where the only two people there, and like over the top, service, sort of a bit clumsy. It was, recent. They were recently discovering customer service in a former Soviet country, right?
Right. So a little difficult, yeah.
And the waiter was so excited that I ordered the creme brulee because it was the chef's favorite special thing. Okay. And what they delivered me was kind of a milky soup, and
no,
it resembled in no way, shape, or form ever creme brulee.
Matthew, we bring you creme brulee. It's good. It's good.
and 4 people crowded around to see if I was going to like it when I was eating it.
Just making a face. Did you pull a face?
I was like, delicious. Just and I still talk about that to this day.
Well, thanks again for calling in, Jen. We love to hear your lovely voice, and we appreciate you.
We do.
You're a good egg. That's it for this week's voicemails. Again, you can leave us one at 1-877-327-5786 or 1-877-DARK-PTN. We'd love to hear from you, even if it is just to say hi and to tell us to go shit in our hats. If you're stumped for what to chat with us about, a quick story is welcome. All right. We do have some PayPal donations and another from buymeacoffee.com. And Jen not only called in, our friend Jen Hesse not only called in, she also made a donut money donation.
Wow.
And she said, ooh, the new site looks amazing. So for those who haven't seen it yet, I redid the look of the Dark Poutine site, darkpoutine.com. She says, love you guys and the variety of stories and perspectives you share. Keep up the great work. So yeah, if you go to darkpoutine.com, you can see a bit. I gave it a fresh coat of paint.
Oh, we have a website?
What's that?
We have a website?
Yes, we have a website, Matthew.
Cool.
Yeah. Anyway, and that's where people can listen. They can listen to the show there because I have a playlist of the shows and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of fun.
Cool.
And I also added a new way for people to give us donut money, and that's buymeacoffee.com. And we have another person who donated from there, and her name is Evie Walker. And Evie says, love the show and keep up the great work. Go take a poop in your toque. Blue hat emoji.
Wow.
So thank you, Evie.
Evie Walker.
I wonder where Evie is from. I'm curious, Matthew.
I hope that she's not from Ayr and has a Walker financial company.
Oh, why? What happened there?
Well, that was the case we just did.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Evie Walker. So there's a plot of land. I don't know. I guess somebody named the Walkers used to own it. Mm-hmm. And my mom and dad had a plot. My grandfather owned it, but we called it Walkers. And there are these hills in southwestern Ontario. It was known as Walkers.
Okay.
So I think Evie Walker somehow is connected to that plot of land.
I think you've mentioned that before.
Yeah, probably Walkers, yeah.
But that's cool. That's really cool. So, well, thank you, Evie, very much for your donation. We really appreciate it.
Evie's from Cairngorm.
Cairngorm, where is that?
Southwestern Ontario.
Of course it is.
Or Scotland.
Yeah, it's like if there is a place named an English, Scottish, or Irish name in Canada, guaranteed there is the English place or an English, Irish, or Scottish place with that name as well.
Of course. Because that's where they came from.
Because that's where they came from.
Because London, UK was not named after London, Ontario, I'll tell you that much.
No, it definitely was not. Thanks to all our patrons and Donut Money donors, past and present, for your generosity. It helps to keep the show going. You can become a patron of Dark Poutine at patreon.com/darkpoutine. For a one-time donation, you can send us donut money via PayPal or interact using our email address, darkpoutinepodcast@gmail.com. If you don't already subscribe to the show, it would mean a lot if you did. You can easily find Dark Poutine on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. If you haven't gotten yours yet, my 2 books are available to order via links on the Dark Poutine website or anywhere fine books are sold. And speaking of darkpoutine.com, check it out for show notes and other cool stuff. We'd appreciate it if you gave Dark Poutine a like or a follow on Facebook and Instagram. Most importantly, thank you for listening. Tell your friends about us. Word of mouth is a powerful thing. And that's it for this episode of Dark Poutine. So until next time, don't forget to be a good egg and not a bad apple. I totally forgot what we were doing.
Bye, everybody.
Bye from Matthew and me, the absent-minded professor.